Okay, hello. I'm just going to talk you through today how to answer a how useful question for the WW1 medicine exam paper. And the first thing you need to do is read the question. So, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the problems faced by medical staff treating battle injuries on the Western Front? I must make sure that I understand what the question is asking me. So, when we're talking about how useful, and I might want to highlight this first of all, just so I know what the question is asking me to do. Useful just means what you can learn, okay? So the question is asking me, what can I learn from sources A and B about the problems faced by medical staff that treated battle injuries on the Western Front, okay? So what can I learn from sources A and B about the problems faced by medical staff treating battle injuries on the Western Front? It asks us to explain our answer using sources A and B and your own knowledge. Now, I'm going to read first of all because that's step one. And whilst I read source A, I'm really looking at anything that connects with the question about problems facing medical staff. And as I read, I might highlight what those problems were. Okay, so source A is from the Diary of Oswald Robertson, written on the 30th of November 1917. He's an army surgeon working on the Western Front during the First World War. Good. We're going to come back to this part a bit later because today at the start we're going to focus on the content of the source, which is this part here, what the source has to tell us about battle injuries. It says men were horribly mutilated. Okay, that's already something that sparked my interest, so I'm going to highlight that. They're horribly mutilated. This tells us that obviously there were some quite serious injuries that the medics were having to deal with. Many were dying when brought into the ward. Okay, well that's obviously a clear problem, so I'm going to highlight that. All the beds were full and we began putting stretchers on the floor. Okay, so clearly there was just not enough space. Okay, the beds were full, so they didn't have enough space. They had to put lots of the stretchers full of the men on the floor. Blood everywhere, clothes soaked in blood, pools of blood in the stretchers, streams of blood dropping from the stretchers to the floor. Okay, clearly we know that blood loss was a big problem. So there's blood everywhere. They're struggling, seemingly that they're struggling to cope with the injuries that are being faced. My rubber apron was one solid red smear. All we could do was try to stop the bleeding and get the patients as comfortable as possible. Okay, this kind of telling us that there's a few limitations to what they could do to help everyone that entered this area. I could only transfuse an occasional patient. Okay, so a bit about blood transfusions there. The majority had to take their chance and go through the operation as best as they could. Okay, they must go for the operation as best as they could. Okay, so I've got some of the problems. I'm going to start off first of all thinking about what we can learn about these problems and treating these battle injuries. Okay. So clearly, first of all, this is quite a negative source. Okay, so I've worked out it's quite negative in the way that it's showing some of the problems faced. Okay, and my first thing I need to do is look at the content of the source, and I need to write a sentence about what I can learn from the source about the problems faced. So to start off my sentence, source A is useful because we're using the words of the question for an inquiry into the problems faced by medical staff treating battle injuries, because I can infer that. Okay, and you're going to write a sentence telling me what can you learn about these problems? What can you learn about the problems that were faced? What problems were faced? And what can you learn about the problems? Then step two, after you've told me what you learn, okay, and you've got a sentence telling me what you can infer about the problems, you need to back this up or support it with a quote. Okay, you might want to use two quotes if you've got some short quotations that you want to add into two, or make into two. So you might want to add two quotes, and you can do that here. And you want to say source A says, and you're going to pick out one or two quotes to support the idea that there were problems faced by those medics on the Western Front. After you've done that, you need to connect the source with your own knowledge. Okay, so You're going to have a sentence that tells me this connects to my own knowledge because, and this is where you have to write about 2 to 3 sentences about what you know about the problems faced. Okay, so anything that you've learned about already from the World War I medicine topic that isn't in the source, okay, you're going to support the source with your own knowledge. So what do I know about the problems faced? What own knowledge do I have to actually agree with what the source is telling me? Okay. All right, once you've done that, you're then going to have a look at the author and purpose of the source. If you go up, okay, and you have a look at what is called the provenance of the source, this is this part here, we're going to have a look at who created the source, who's the author, and then after that we're going to think about why they might have created this source at this time. Okay, it's from the diary. Okay, quite interestingly, the nature of the source of the diary. It's from the diary of Oswald Robertson. Okay, and it was written on the 30th of November 1917. Now, he was an army surgeon, so this bit's going to be quite important to us in a moment. He was an army surgeon working on the Western Front during the First World War. All right, so then we go down and we have a think, okay, who created the source? Okay, well, it's just told us the source was created by an army surgeon, and what was his name? Okay, and we're going to literally write that out. The source was created by da-da-da-da. And then you've got to think, how trustworthy is this person in telling us about the problems faced and why? Can we rely on Oswald Robertson? If we think that he is a reliable, trustworthy source, then why? Why might we be able to rely on him? If we think that he's not, then why? Why might he not be as reliable? Okay, and it's always as connected to the question. So can we rely on Oswald Robertson to tell us about the problems faced by medical staff? Okay, to what extent can we rely on him and why? Okay, we're going to tell myself, you can tell me if he's trustworthy or not. After you've done that, you've got to look at the purpose of the source. This is, what reason do you think the source was created for? Why do you think it's been created at this time? Okay. If we go up, okay, it's a diary. So if it's a diary, we might want to think to ourselves, well, why is he creating this diary? Why is he producing a diary in 1917 as he carries out this work? Okay, is it for personal use, personal reasons, or is it to be published? Oh, anyway, who do we think his audience is in creating this diary? Is it himself? Okay, or is it someone else? Okay. Once you've thought about that, you've got to then say, okay, the source is a diary, and it could have been created for, and then you've got to say, well, why has he created this diary at this time, and do we think therefore it's more trustworthy, more reliable, or less reliable, and why? Okay, if you spend the next 10 minutes having a go at source A, okay, and then I will have a I'll talk you through the source B in a moment. Okay.